Hello and welcome back to the Adaptability Movement Podcast. I'm Ben, this is Dan. So this podcast is about, we'll give you tips and strategies and some systems around how you practically advance the performance of your team and the people within your team. So as we mentioned in the last podcast, if you haven't listened to the last podcast yet, go back and have a listen to that one before you listen to this one. Because today we're going to talk more about Dan's story and his journey through adaptability and through life and all the above. So to kick off, I mentioned last time it's a good story in terms of when I say good story, I think it's there's a lot of lessons that can be taken away from it, and a lot of you've had a lot of ups and downs, gone through. Some within your sporting career, you had some highs in terms of playing over 100 SANFL games down at Glenelg, some lows of a career-ending injury, and then some more highs of making Australian teams in discus and stuff in parasport after that. So, if you want to give the listener a bit more information around what are those challenges that you went through, I suppose the injury being the main one, and I'm sure you'll touch on that. But what were the major lessons you learnt from going through those experiences?
Yeah, so the easy thing would be say adaptability, I guess. That would fit into our business branding and everything we want to share with people. But look, for me, I was born in Tassie, so I guess I'm not a native South Australian, but have certainly settled in here over the last 18 years. So. My life has been a succession of exploration and curiosity and trying to seek out a better way of doing things and to feel more connected with why I'm doing them. So, that journey started off in Tassie and playing soccer and then having this sort of carrot dangled in front of me around football and that I should come out and do footy and it wasn't the thing that I felt drawn to at the time. And once I finally did, things kind of really opened up for me because I'd gone through a school system and playing soccer and made some friends and had some good times, but I hadn't really felt like I was nailing it. Like I hadn't felt like I was doing something that was going to take me a bit further in life, and footy kind of became that quite quickly for me when I finally went along and supported a mate in the States tryouts and. I missed the cut, but I ended up going and playing local footy and sort of cutting my teeth at that. And things just sort of evolved. And what I learned through sport, through all of my sporting career, is just that so much of what we do is about people and the relationships with them, around the growth that we're seeking to achieve, and then sharing that experience together. So for me now, those three things are what I look at as key criteria to work out what my purpose is. And I absolutely did not have that as a junior in sport. I guess this fear and this pressure that I put on myself of not being able to perform or not performing well enough, and it would often constrain me in what I actually did. And I was always trying to live up to both my own expectations and others. Rather than being satisfied with progress, it was always looking beyond what I was doing to something else. I was never satisfied, and there was a lot of anxiety around that, not having the conviction to make my own decisions and having to ask other people what I should do. And but it's something that, looking back now, I feel like I was always a very perseverant person, and I think I got that trait particularly from my mother. And that's one it held me in good stead, I guess, because it to me, if we talk about a spectrum from resilience to adaptability. It begins with resilience and being able to get back up off the canvas and go again. And I think mostly I had that. Like I'd probably feel a bit like, hard done by and that kind of thing as a younger athlete and younger person. But I was fortunate that I was always going, nah, I'm not giving up. And then perseverance is that really like, I want to go this way. And I absolutely had that, but I was so rigid. I was so constrained by how I do that. And that, again, it served me in some ways and it didn't serve me in others. So I made a trip to SA a couple of years into playing footy and having played for the Tassie state team, and was sort of on the fringe. I played 10 games in both years that I was there and had some really good games and had some pretty average ones, but knew that there was something there that I wanted to sort of explore further. came over here and like you said, I played with Glenelg for 8 years, 100 odd games, and through that process, again, it was a succession of ups and downs. There were some injury problems, always usually to do with some form of impact. Like I was pretty well prepared, being that I was carving my teeth as a sports scientist, studying at UniSA, and always really valued the physical prep, as you mentioned in your story before, and that again served me well sometimes, and other times it was a limiting belief because I wasn't acknowledging that there was so much more to that mental emotional capacity, and so eventually I invested more in the mental stuff, which was really helpful, which was more around the sort of the routines and the planning. So very pragmatic for that sort of masculine-like thinking, and one that I guess fitted quite neatly with a sports science background and study. But the emotional stuff was probably the part in hindsight that I was missing, the mental emotional connection, how they work together. And for me, I think I probably wasn't self-aware enough. I thought that I was, like we all do, but self-aware enough that when I perceived a threat, my thing was like, I've got to solve this, I've got to take it, I've got to do something. And what that would often lead to is a sense of panic. And so, I did a lot of personal development work through my 20s and 30s, and ran my own businesses on the back of sports science, and got more and more holistic about how I went about it. And so starting to encompass more of those things, I ended up doing mindfulness certification. So mindfulness meditation, acceptance and commitment therapy, and those types of modalities, and found them really useful. And then I feel like just as I was kind of getting to a place where I was getting more balance as an athlete, and I'm 28, 29 now, I was at a club where things were sort of losing balance, and I wasn't feeling it was the right place for me at that time. And so I'd made a decision to move clubs, and I was feeling really comfortable at that. I was moving to a new environment, which is going to create a bit more safety for me, and that opportunity to grow again. And then, I had 3 minutes into a game down at Glenelg Oval on a Friday night, I landed badly on an ankle, and I never played footy again. And that's that's the crux of it. Like overnight, like initially you don't think that's the end. You just think, oh, I've injured my ankle, and I guess just 4 weeks and I'm back out in the park, and it just became this like ongoing saga of issues and operations and interventions where I'd end up in hospital because of the extreme pain that I was feeling from them, and each time it was a diminishing amount of functionality that was returning beyond those things. So it was too hard too quickly in terms of trying to fix the ankle, and I there's some grievances I have, I guess, with the medical team that I felt like were not offering me that sort of context around being more patient and being able to protect it and rest it more. But at the end of the day, like we need to be the architect of our own existence, and I guess in some ways I was putting that trust into someone else to be that for me in that moment. So at each point there's been the opportunity to reflect and learn something from an experience, and I think that's something else that I've got again, maybe from parents or just experiences throughout life, but that just because something goes wrong doesn't mean you just sort of throw your toys out and give up. Like for me, it's always about, well, how do I get better? Like how do I learn from this? And when I say better, I don't mean like necessarily just be a better athlete but just a better person, like someone that's able to meet my own needs and therefore be able to bring my best to others and the relationships that I'm in. So that 2 years post-injury was really tough. There was moments where I was probably feeling depressed. There was moments where I was feeling really anxious. There was moments where I just felt hopeless in that there was, what was going to come from this. Like I've spent my whole life trying to get to peak performance, and now I can't walk without pain, and I can barely walk at all. And it's like this real, it's a shudder. It's a really kind of rough way of going, oh, who are you? Like, what's life going to look like for you now? And
well, that's the thing. Like, as athletes, our whole identity is around being an athlete, isn't it? And then when that's taken away from you, all of a sudden you're like, well, what now? Who am I? Like everyone knows me as the athlete or the footballer or whatever it is. So I guess you had to work through that process of then, rediscovering who you were outside of football, I guess.
Yeah, 100%. It's funny because I feel like I didn't always identify strongly as a footballer, like it, because I'd played a lot of other sports and done different things, and I felt like that was society trying to pigeonhole me into one area, but I absolutely identified as being an athlete.
Yeah.
Like for me, it was like just, well, which sport then?
Yeah.
And that can become a bit of a trap. For me, that became an identity at a time in life where you're lacking some self-confidence. You're in your teens and you don't know what your value is to the world. And while it can be really helpful as a crutch to get you through that period, if you're kind of attaching yourself to that, then everything becomes a succession of pass and fail in life, which means you're just on this yo-yo.
Yeah, I mean, we were speaking to someone the other day about some young footballers who are going through a pretty tough time in terms of getting drafted and whatnot these days. And when I was getting drafted, 13 years ago? Geez, that makes me feel old now. There's hardly any media scrutiny around anything, but kids these days as young as 14, 15 are getting media spotlight around the top 20 potential draftees for 4 or 5 years time or whatever it is, and that plays a massive role in putting additional pressure on people. Again, talking about identifying as a footballer or an athlete or whatever, that then becomes who you are, and everyone knows you as that. So, I know personally that I had to go through that experience of learning that I'm more than a footballer, I'm more than an athlete. And there's more to life than just those things as well. So, and it's that's something that we teach a lot and help guide some young athletes through in the sporting clubs that we work with. But then there's also that can also be said about your job, and if you're working in a business or you got a certain career that you identify as I'm the CEO, or I'm the great marketing person or whatever it is, and that becomes who you are. So it's about learning to be more aware around who you are outside of just the main thing that you are, and that you're not just one thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we play lots of different roles in life, and if we're going to attach ourselves to any one of them, then there's a risk that if we lose that role, we lose ourselves.
Yeah. So in your journey, like I've heard you talk about your story many times now, but the one story that always sticks with me is the one about I guess you describe it as probably your lowest point around when you're at the aquatic center and the feeling in that moment that you had. Do you just want to go through that, like explain that story a bit and go through that?
It's funny. Like sometimes that brings up more emotion than others, and I'm just feeling that right now. But so it was 2 years post injury. So by this time I've had 6 operations. I've had 2 emergency room visits after failed interventions that caused me a lot of pain, and multiple different traumas really for the ankle, like in my attempts to heal it. And so I was at the South Australian Aquatic Centre out in Marion, and I was going out there so regularly over that 2 years, like thinking that I was going to outsmart this injury. I was going to, rehab it, to health.
You were trying to be resilient and
in a lot of ways, and persevere with one method which wasn't really working for me, and it was in that moment that I got out of the pool and in agony. Like there's something that happens to a joint in your body when you continue to extend the inflammation cycle. So rather than allowing it to settle down, it turns into something called synovitis. And for anyone that's ever seen one of those lava lamps, and the way that sort of the blobby, stringy kind of stuff goes up and down that lava lamp, that's what the surface of your joint looks like when it gets to a point of synovitis. And so for me, that was a very painful experience because it feels hot. It feels like someone's got a hot poker on the inside of your joint pressing out, and I didn't want to put weight through that ankle, but at the same time, I need to walk, I need to function, and I was getting it. So I got out of the pool, I managed to get myself changed and stuff, bag over the shoulder, and trying to work my way out of the building. And many of you can probably relate to the feeling of being in a pool in that sort of hot, humid environment, the really kind of sticky air and the smell of chlorine. And so I was just really keen to get out of there. I spent too much time in pools over that 2 years, and And as I was sort of working the way through the foyer and the glass doors open up and, you know, to step outside into the fresh air, I'm also stepping out into this, you know, brickwork abyss, like this paved sort of area where there's no railings, nothing to hold on to. And, you know, it's only about 20, 25 metres, as you know, from there to the lift to get back to the car park. But it felt insurmountable. Like I was just in so much pain. Like the question popped into my head is like, do I get down and crawl my way back to the car park? And then the feeling of inadequacy and incompetency that comes with that, and the self-worth, like it was deeply emotional. Like I got back to the car and I cried. Like I did get back there. Like I didn't resort to crawling, but I persisted through the pain and sat in the car and finally acknowledged to myself and accepted where I was at in life, that I wasn't going to get back to able-bodied sport despite how perseverant I was, and you know how persistent I was in seeking a solution, and that it was time that I accepted that, you know, where I was at, so that I could actually plan where I was going to go to.
And that's a big thing that we speak about is, you know, you can't really move forward if you don't accept where you are currently. So you need to really. We often start by taking a bit of a snapshot of like, where are you currently? Like, yes, you might want to get to wherever you want to get to, but if you aren't aware of where you currently are, you're never going to be able to get there.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, for you, that then led to the next part of your story.
Yeah. Well, like as you say, many of the teams and the people we've worked with, a lot of them are actually clear on where they want to go, or they, you know, they haven't like an outcome that where they want to go, right? But they don't acknowledge where they're at, and they don't acknowledge what it's going to take to get there. And so, as you mentioned, for me, that was that moment. That was that pivotal sort of turning point where I rang Paralympics Australia and I sought some support. You know, I sort of surrendered to that experience, and that was the beginning of where we are today, I guess. Like, because it was how I began a para career. It was how I got classified as a para athlete. Discovering that, you know, I was classified as a permanent condition, which the coaches get really excited about because it means you never have to go back every year and get that redone. And then I'm going, well, doesn't that mean that I'm stuffed for life? But it was a sense of meaning again. And you know, in some ways I probably repeated that not mistake, but that same kind of pattern of, oh, I'm an athlete, that's my identity again. But in that moment, I absolutely needed something. I needed a reason to progress myself in different ways, and to challenge myself, to find a way to function in life and to feel like it was worthwhile for me again, when I felt like I was feeling very hopeless and very struggling with self-worth. So and a lot of the support that I had through that time was you know, through a new partner. I met Kim I only met her after my first 3 operations. There was an existing friendship network which were just incredible, and you know, my parents, and so, you know, it only really sort of highlighted and taught to me again the value in relationships and sport. It's actually it's less about winning premierships, and it's more about the experience you share with other people, you know, and then how that becomes, you know, a bookmark moment. Like, it's something we'll talk about more in future episodes, but it's a point in time that you can come back to and celebrate and share with someone again, whether you won a premiership or not.
Yeah, and that's hard to actually describe that to someone, you know, a 15-year-old kid coming through, like, you know, don't worry about winning premierships, just worry about the connections you make. But, I mean, the amazing thing is that some of the work we've been doing with some of these clubs, like, at the end of the season, that's the main thing they've spoken about, is that they've developed a deeper connection with their teammates, and the team is and the culture of the team is changed dramatically, and that's something that's, you know, for us that brings us such great joy. You know, if they go out and win a premiership, that's great. Like, and yes, because we're all about improving performance, but performance doesn't necessarily need to be on the sporting field. It can be off the sporting field as well, or, you know, and same in, you know, performance within your workplace, or you know, performance within your family, whatever it might be. Like, we all have to perform constantly on a day-to-day basis, and so it's how you can do that to the best of your ability. But then and comes back to, like, you know, what is important to you, and what does success look like to you, or your club, or your business. That's a very big thing, that how you define success should guide, you know, where you want to get to. And And for these clubs, making greater connection was what defined greater success for them and for us and for everyone involved, because more people wanted to be involved in that, people wanted to hang around more, and ultimately that led to better performances on the field. So
yeah, and like like you said, like that brings a great sense of meaning to both of us. But like in that moment, hearing that feedback and understanding that we've actually been a catalyst for self-awareness in a process which is very difficult to teach, and it was because we didn't teach it. We led people through an experience and we provided them opportunities that we started to extract that, and then through that there's this beautiful kind of realization or recognition that the reason they play sport is because they like sharing it with other people, and that therefore the relationships are really important to them and they want to invest in that and becoming more self-aware of how they can do that. And like all of that stuff underpins performance. Like you said, performance is not limited to a sporting example. Performance is in the boardroom. It's it's in a team anywhere it exists, and it's that opportunity to bring your best, to be as close to optimal as you can in that moment. And so therefore to do that, of course you need well-being, of course you need great relationships, of course you need to understand and connect with yourself and other people in a way that's helpful and nourishing, rather than something that's depleting and just grinding through to get to the end of the season or to get to the end of the quarter, if you're talking about sort of or end of the financial year.
Yeah, and I mean, the way that we do everything in a practical and experiential nature, and I think we'll probably go into that further in future episodes around, why we do that, what that looks like, and the outcome we've seen from that. But it's been something that's been, it's been game changing for us and for the people that we've worked with. So now fast forward a few years, you've transitioned out of footy. You've had your injury, and then you've transitioned into discus, paradiscus. You've made an Australian team, and you've gone over and competed in London at the Olympic Stadium. Like, what was that experience like?
Freaking phenomenal. Like, as you'd imagine, two of the proudest moments having a sporting career are pulling on the Tassie State Guernsey when I played for the Tassie Devils in the VFL, and then when I pulled on the Australian one, to compete at the World Para-Athletic Championships in 2017. And it's just it was really cool to go through an experience where I had so much more context around who I am and where I'm at in a sporting career, and to be able to share it with my partner, Kim. She came over with me, and a team of people that I built around me, because I'd gone from a team sport to what's referred to as an individual sport. There's nothing individual about it really, because you have to have people around. You have to have your coaches and skill acquisition and physios and different support services and people to be able to achieve that. So that was a pretty good experience, because I learnt how to build my own support network rather than relying on the one that was provided for me in a team sport. And that felt really satisfying. And I went through my para-athletic discus career with I made 2 Australian teams. I made the first one in 2017. I made another one in 2009, and then had to withdraw on the day I was supposed to leave for competition, because my wife was having very premature contractions at 24 weeks or something into her pregnancy. And so things, like you mentioned before, there's been a lot of ups and downs in life, but at each point, it's really challenged my resolve around what I care about, and allowed me to practice and test this idea of adaptability. And parasport is a great example of adaptability, because there's so many people doing so many incredible things that an able-bodied person might not think is available to them or it's accessible to them. And the only way you find out is by trying. And I don't mean that you go and be the catalyst for your own injury, but what I mean is that it's like once you can sort of see or find an example that it's possible, just because that's someone else doesn't mean it's not accessible to you. Yeah. And so it's like in my opinion, I've just slammed my microphone. Sorry for the listeners that are probably just like ringing ears. In my experience, there's almost a responsibility once you recognise that something is possible that you maybe previously thought wasn't, that you go and test it and explore it. Yeah. And that, to me, that is adapting, because you go and you do it, you test it, you learn something about it, and then whatever you learn, you're now better informed to be able to take the next step forward, more experienced, better sort of prepared than you've ever been. And once you start to see the world like that, it feels easier. It feels like there's more flow and opportunity, because you're not operating from this set of like this limited thinking that says that there's only so much that's accessible to me, or there's only so much I'm capable of, and you're living in a scarcity-based mindset. And you come back to that feedback from some of those kids at the end of our academies this year, is that like it looks like there's a weight off their shoulders. It looks like this pressure they've been placing on themselves their whole career this far. And these are young kids, but so it's not unsurprising. But to see them with a little bit of relief from that and the freedom to then go and explore and test, man, like that just it feels amazing. And it's not limited to a sporting field. Like we've done that in the boardroom. We've done that like in schools with disengaged kids as well. The ones that don't want to necessarily be there, or they're not feeling like they're part of what's going on. But it's really just being able to shift someone out of this strongly held, closed off kind of mindset that says that it's a protective mindset. It's one that creates safety and certainty for them, but it's not serving them.
Yeah.
And so to be the catalyst for changing that and to cracking that open for the first time and seeing what that looks like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I mean, we're going to go through, again, as the episodes go on, we're going to go through a number of different strategies, tips, different things like we were just speaking about then, and start to explore them a lot more around how you can practically apply them, because as we always say, it's great to be adaptable in attitude, but you also got to be adaptable in your actions, and without the actions, nothing's going to change. So we're going to continue to give you these bits of advice, and hopefully you can take them away, whether that is back to your sporting club, to your workplace, or your family life, wherever it might be for you, to make sure that you're really understanding, I guess, number one, what you're capable of and what opportunities are out there for you, but then also make sure that you're living a life that is serving you, and not one that's out of obligation, or not one that you feel like you're stuck in, like you're moving towards something. And that's the thing that we always mention. You got to always be moving towards something. You got to have a bit of hope, like all that sort of stuff. You can't just be sitting there kind of resigned to the fact that I'm here, this is where I'm going to be forever, type thing.
And so then the question becomes, then how do you design that? Because there might be people that, or you might be listening to this thinking, well, that's fine for you guys to say because you're doing what you want to do and I'm not. But it's really about acknowledging that that type of mindset is accessible to you too, and what you create with that is your destiny. That's the way you want to do it. So all we're saying is that rather than just trying to escape the stuff that you don't like, or the stuff that you're not comfortable with, where's that going to lead you if you're just constantly running around in circles trying to get away from something? I need to identify something that I can move towards and not get overly attached to it, but just have a bit of a picture of what would be optimal for me. I think when we go, it's got to be a premiership and it's got to be this or that becomes really rigid. But when we say, well, to be successful, to perform well consistently, to be at my best, those types of things, well those are pretty achievable in different ways, and all of that underpins the other outcome-based goal that you might have had in mind in the first place, with the freedom to explore.
Great. So, you can find us, find out more information about us, online at theadaptabilitymovement.world. It's our website, or you can find us on social media, Instagram at the Adaptability Movement, or Dan, myself on LinkedIn as well. If you have liked this episode, and if you have found some benefit out of it, we'd love it if you'd share this with someone within your network. Just sharing this with one person could give them a bit of support, a bit of guidance, a bit of information that they can take and use in their own life. And that's what we want to do. We want to share this information with as many people as we possibly can. So we're going to continue to produce more episodes like this, in the hope that we can continue to give you value moving forward.
Awesome. So by all means, get in touch, and we'll chat to you in the next episode. Thanks for listening to the Adaptability Movement Podcast. If you like what we do, please subscribe, share this podcast, and you can find us at theadaptabilitymovement.world, or email us at info@theadaptabilitymovement.world.